This is Philip Rostek speaking. This is part 4 of my life. Last time we finished up with me going to Carnegie Mellon and starting to study there. And we will investigate some things that I can remember about that event. My parents were both from Pittsburgh. My grandparents lived there. So I was familiar with the area of Oakland, close to where Carnegie Mellon was. And I remember Carnegie Mellon from when I was a kid, and my brother went to college there. Chucky was 8 years older than me, like I said. But Dad and I would go down to visit especially, and I knew the turf pretty well. Oakland is situated in close proximity to the school where the Carnegie Museum is. Phipps Conservatory is there. It was, in the 40s especially, still the cultural district of Pittsburgh, where the symphony played Forbes Field and the Pirates played baseball there. And so I kind of knew all of that stuff. However, living there was quite another thing. I didn't really know where to stay when I first arrived there. And so I lived at Mudge Graduate House and found residence there. It was part of the all-detergent fortune, and it was a kind of mansion close to campus, a 10-minute walk to the art building. It was beautiful, building with black and white checkered floors, and in the lobby with crystal chandeliers. Cooks ask you how you liked your eggs in the morning. I was kind of over my head in that environment. In the dining room, there would be other graduate students wearing nice clothes with cashmere sweaters and gabardine slacks, many of whom were already far along in their careers with offices and secretaries and this and that. And I found myself like, what am I doing here? I don't really know even why I'm going to school or what I'm going to do after I get out. And so those were my feelings back then. And it was a daunting kind of experience, even though it was exciting. I was very aware that my middle-class parents were paying for all of this. And even though I had gotten the best tuition reduction of all the graduate students that applied that year, I still was aware of kind of freeloading on my parents, and I didn't want to work. I wanted to do art full-time, and so I went there with some conviction about whatever I was doing, I was going to do a good job of it. I got along well with my main teacher, Bruce Breland. He was the department head, but he was being demoted then. His daughter had died a year or two earlier of cancer, and he was diverted in his attention during that period of time. And the new department head, then I was introduced to Orville Winsand. I got along with Orville very well, and he was always very fair to me. I had started taking my classes, and I was taking art history with the dean, Dean Rice. And as such, I used to go to Hunt Library and help pick out the slides that he would use in his classroom presentations. and would go into his big office on the main floor and with his secretary, and was able to walk in there, and I was able to feel like I was a part of some bigger structure. I also babysat his house, which was a great, beautiful place in Carnegie Place, about 15 minutes by bicycle ride from where I was staying. I used to watch his dogs and his house when he would travel on weekends, and his house was inspirational in a way. The living room was the ceiling went all the way up to the second floor, and the surrounding perimeter was total bookcases with a sliding ladder that helped you get up to where these volumes were presented, and it all together made a big impression. Going to his house was and staying there was amazing. He had a tarn with goldfish swimming in it, and I walked his dogs in Frick Park, and just watched the environment on many occasions for the dean. He was nice to me. I didn't really work hard at his class. I never read books or anything like that. I was pretty well versed in art history from my experience at Penn State. But it was educational for me to be around a major figure in the art department like the dean. And I remember one time walking with him to class, and I had just bought a record, and he asked me, "What are you listening to?" And it was a record of Emil Galel's playing the Brahms Second Piano Concerto, and it was conducted by Fritz Reiner. And when Dean Rice saw that, he was impressed, because Fritz Reiner was the conductor of the Pittsburgh Symphony for a time, and he liked the idea that I kind of was I was following up on great musical experience that came out of the hometown which we shared. And it impressed him that I was listening to these kind of things. And for my final paper for Dean Rice, I went to the Pittsburgh Symphony and listened to Beethoven's Fifth and tried to explain why that piece of music still held people's attention after all these years. Anyway, I guess everything went okay. And later in Richard Beeman's seminar class, I would rehearse a piece of piano music that I made up, and scheduled my performance to be in a room where there was a piano, and I invited the dean to my seminar performance, where a colleague wore a bikini and crushed cornflakes and put it into the dean's hand, and then curled his hand up around it while I played the piano, wearing a costume that mildly reminiscent of a Chopin period frock coat, and she wore a cape. And we performed this thing, and I was coughing, and she gave me some cough medicine, and I finished the performance, and we dashed out of the room. And later, the next class period, Richard Beeman said, "Well, Phil, you left after your performance, and now we would like you to explain what all of that was about." And I said, "Well, if I have to explain it, it would mean that it bore the responsibility to be explained, and so I don't really know if I want to do that." And he said, "I understand your feelings, but everybody here in this seminar is telling people what they do, and I'm your teacher, and I want you to do that." And I said, "I understand, and I respect your authority." And so Respectfully, I will say this, Professor Breland, Professor Beeman. A, B, C, D. Therefore, Babe Ruth. Therefore, watermelon. And Professor Beeman, instead of being put off, said, "Well, Phil, this is Carnegie Mellon. We understand the depths of subjectivity that can be entertained by the creative artist in this school, and that explanation of what you did is satisfactory to me." And for my critique, he said I did the best job of all the graduate students, explaining what they did and why. And for that reason, I hold very fond memories of Richard Beeman, and it was curious. And later, the dean would express that he was mildly impressed, but I think what impressed him the most was the lady in the bikini that crushed the cornflakes that she gave to him in a kind of humorous kind of way. But anyway, it all went very well for me, and that was kind of like one of the highlights of my experience in my first year there. I will go on to explain as best I can a little bit of my experience with Robert Lepper and Bruce Breland, who I studied with that first year, and in depth, because it was much more serious than that kind of performance art, but it was a prelude. That performance was a prelude to what I would probably end up doing my second year with a little more conviction. This was, again, a reminder. It was in 1971. Performance was kind of a big deal for me back then. My ideas really involved what was going on in the world. I thought that if you were a conservative person, you would go towards minimal art, and if you were a liberal person, you would go more towards performance. And my job was to figure out how in the heck I was going to do that. My favorite artists back then were Bruce Nauman and Dennis Oppenheim, and maybe that is a good place for me to stop this presentation, and we'll dig into things a little more in the next part.